we've just heard from Naftali Bennett, economy minister in Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet, who was sent here to the US to lobby for a harder stance on Iran. But in Israel, not everyone is on board with this strategy, including some who've reached the highest echelons of Israel's security establishment. Efraim Halevy spent decades at the Israeli spy agency Mossad, even running it for more than 4 years. And he believes that Israel is making a big mistake by pushing for more sanctions and not supporting negotiations. Mr. Halevy joins me now from Tel Aviv. Thank you for joining me and welcome. Do I have you right? Do you think that now is the time to talk?
I think it's always a time to talk. I think that talking is better than anything else. And the only way to convince people of your views is to talk to them. And over the years, I have always advocated talking to the Iranians and talking to our enemies in the hope and in the conviction that if we have the right cause, we have a chance of convincing them.
Mm-hmm. So what do you say then to Mr. Bennett or even to the Prime Minister Netanyahu and to the group in Israel who are very concerned about the current negotiations underway? Are you concerned that this is just an easy option for Iran to continue?
I think we took a decision, a very fateful decision in my view, when originally we decided that we would entrust the negotiations to the powers that be. We decided that this was an international issue and that the international community should confront Iran and deal with the Iranians in any possible confrontation and in any possible setting that they would choose. Once we made that decision, we have to have a minimum of trust in those who we have asked to represent us. My view has been that we should have been at the table. My view is that the countries of the Middle East should have been at the table. We're now negotiating a serious issue which will have far-reaching consequences to all the countries in the region. And none of the countries in the region are at the negotiating table. The only country at the negotiating table from the Middle East is Iran. There is a price to pay for this, and we're now paying this price, and I don't think we can now change the rules of the game. And we have, to some extent, put our trust in the United States of America and the other negotiators that they will get a good deal. And I think that the test of a good deal is the end game, not just the tactics of how you reach the final conclusion, but how you take the Iranians along with you, and then cunningly, if I say that, and purposely, and certainly in an organized manner, bring them to the point where they will make the decision of no longer following the route of a military nuclear capability.
Mr. Halevy, you have been at the very top of Israel's intelligence establishment. Do you believe that Iran poses an existential threat to the state of Israel right now?
I think that Iran is a very serious threat, but I've always said, and I will say it again this evening, that I believe that Israel is indestructible. And I think that this should be the basic tenet of every Israeli leader, to have self-confidence and the confidence in the future of Israel and in the indestructible character of Israel. We have enough means at our disposal to make sure that nobody in the world can destroy us. This has to be the point of departure. And I think it is wrong in this context to bring up the memories of the past, the memories of the holocaust of so many years ago, when we were defenseless. Then we were defenseless. Now we're not defenseless. And we should have confidence in the means at our disposal, and we should be more cool and collected in the way we approach the problems of the moment.
Well, then how do you react? Give me your reaction to what you just heard Minister Bennett telling me and what you hear Prime Minister Netanyahu tell the world and lobby the United States on this issue.
I listened very carefully to Mr. Bennett's presentation. I think he made a very good case for the case that he is representing. And obviously I listened very attentively to everything that the Prime Minister is saying. But I believe that in this particular case, we should put a bigger emphasis on our self-confidence. I know the Prime Minister has great respect for a figure of the past, Winston Churchill. I was a young boy in London when Winston Churchill spoke to the people of Britain in World War II. And the main theme of everything he had to say in every presentation he made, there was no television at the time, it was only radio, that whatever happens, we are confident, we the British people as it was then, are confident that we will be triumphant. And therefore people should have courage, and the courage of their conviction. Yes, there were serious dangers ahead, there were serious dangers which had to be attended to at the moment, but there was a strong streak of self-confidence. And I believe that if the Prime Minister were to take that line, he would be rewarded both in the international arena and inside this country.
Let me move on to another thing that is obviously incredibly important, and that is the state of play between Israel and the Palestinians. There are current talks, although some state of suspension at the moment. What is your reaction to when Mr. Bennett says, I vehemently oppose a Palestinian state, or that there will be no peace with the Palestinians? What is the option for Israel?
I believe there are two basic options. One is the two-state solution, which at the moment is the least probable but the most desirable. And there is another option at the other end of the scale, and that is a one-state solution, which is the least desirable but the most probable. And when we have a situation like this, then you have to look for something in between. And I believe the in-between has to be ultimately a Palestinian state in temporary borders. I think we cannot settle all the problems within this time frame that we have. And I think that both sides have to make concessions as a result of this. The fallacy in the argumentation of Mr. Bennett is that he believes that this is a game in which we can dictate to the other side the way in which they should live and the way in which they should govern themselves. And he looks upon this in terms of what is best for Israel, and I understand that. And he believes that what is outside that, shall we say, that circle of what is best to us, that is left to the Palestinians. Ultimately, we have to negotiate with them from some point of equality. They are now a nation, for better or for worse, and we are a nation. And we must negotiate as two nations negotiating with each other. And the question is not only what is good for us and the rest remains for them. We have to take their concerns and their problems into consideration, of course, in a manner which will secure our security needs. And on this as well, we shouldn't use security needs as a cover for something else.
Efraim Halevy, thank you very much for joining me and for your insights.